So glad. By the way, I am at this cafe, so I'm hoping I feel increasingly sensitive to the background noise. I'm hoping that it's not too loud. Okay, awesome. Oh, great. That's good. Well, Sarah and Ray, thank you so much for asking me to speak. And I feel, I felt blessed to be able to stay connected with the community at this far distance. And not only that, but to be able to still give talks at a service. It's super cool. So, first off, I want to say that if you have any memories, you can tell by the title that this is going to deal with memory. If you have any memories that are too traumatic or otherwise too difficult to sit with or explore, I recommend not choosing them for the processes I'm about to describe. I'm not going to like lead us in any sort of on the spot practice, but just in general, I want to make that preface. So I want to begin by introducing my notion of meaning. I've been thinking about meaning a lot this year. And one very simple way I've been thinking about meaning is that what we find meaningful is what we return to most. Um, what we return to is not always good, of course, and it's not always conscious. So I'm not saying that meaning is inherently positive, but I'm saying that what we return to is what we find most meaningful because we're placing our, attention and time and energy on those things rather than other things. So we return, for example, to specific behaviors, patterns, habits, people, ideas, belief systems, music, books, internet content, food, and memories, the last of which I will get into more specifically in a minute. But as I said, in my estimation, this returning process is not always fully conscious. So as I've been exploring meaning and this notion of returning in my own personal life, I've really been slowly but surely trying to make my returning, my meaning making processes more conscious and more intentional. And I personally like to kind of frame this conscious, intentional meaning making process. I know that's a mouthful. Uh, this intentional meaning making process as a process of consecration, which is a term that means the act of making sacred. And so while our returning and our meaning making can be passive and sometimes unhealthy, disempowering, unbalanced, imprisoning even, for example, like addiction, like getting swallowed by our phones for hours at a time and then thinking, damn, where did that time go? Like getting stuck in mental or emotional loops that make us feel unfree, like perpetuating delusional perceptions of ourselves, others, or the world. So it can be like that, but it can also be made more lucid in ways that actually help prevent these traps and that amplify rather than compromise our wellness or our well-being. So for me, this has led me to alter my relationship with small, medium size, and big things in my life. For example, earlier this year, I unlatched from my nicotine habit, for example. Um, and that was a big deal for me, and I've also cultivated space around other habits that I'm particularly attached to. Again, small, medium size, and large. And surprisingly, the I feel self-conscious that I'm speaking loud now, because there's people around. Surprisingly, the hardest task has been to stop biting my nails. I know that sounds crazy, and hopefully it doesn't gross anybody out. But yes, I've been biting my nails for quite some time. Some weeks are more successful than others in my process of trying to de-loop from that. Um, so one seed that led me to reflect about to start reflecting and exploring this was leading up to my move from LA to Medellin. And in that process, I had to get rid of a lot of stuff. And in the process of getting rid of a lot of stuff, my aim was to pack only 3 suitcases, a backpack, and one other clothing bag. And because of that, this required what I started calling pruning. So at the time, I started using this word pruning. And so I pruned lots of clothes. I pruned hundreds of books. I pruned all my furniture, most of my knickknacks, my kitchen stuff, and about 40 notebooks. And the books and the notebooks were the hardest part for sure. But I'm grateful that I pruned those things. And I've actually been continuing to prune things after that. It kind of like got the ball rolling, and it led to this talk essentially. Um, so that whole process of leading up to my move, it made me vividly confront my own possessions, you know, which ones did I return to most? Which ones should I return to most? Which ones had transient power and which ones had lasting power? Which notebooks, for example, contained material that was worth returning to? Which books had I reread or were worth rereading? These were the sorts of questions that I was considering. And this pruning or discernment is another word that we can use here. This pruning or discernment practice, as I said, didn't go away after I moved. It actually started to leak into just about every corner of my life. And I've done it with time management, with my book manuscripts, my own writing projects. And it's kind of given me higher standards for my own writing as I'm trying to make sure that everything I keep is as potent as possible, just like when I was printing my books and whatnot. Um, and it's leaked into to my relationship with my music library, for example. So the hundreds of music playlists that I've made in the last like 15 years, I have returned to them, and I've taken my time to prune them, and I have been, you know, plucking the songs that I feel like are worth keeping around, and putting them on new playlists, which might end up being, gathering new playlists now. But I've gotten rid of tons of old playlists and a lot of songs that were in my library. And I've been kind of using certain discernment questions about like what stays and what goes. And so, for example, when I'm listening to music that has lyrics, because I have been listening to a lot of music that doesn't have lyrics, but when I'm listening to music that has lyrics, I'm thinking, do these lyrics misalign with my values? Do they align with my values? Which ones are transversely beautiful? Which ones are more disposable? That's a word that comes up a lot. I think I've in a lot of ways been trying to um, prune things that are more disposable in my life, and it feels, the music thing and all the other different sub processes with that have felt kind of like spring cleaning, like Marie Kondo for the soul or something. Um, and so I've been thinking about the soul in this regard. I know the soul is a word with a lot of baggage, but I've been thinking about this as kind of soul refinement. And so the soul can be defined in many different ways, of course. But for me, I have started to kind of creatively look at the soul as something like the internal ecosystem or my inner garden that I can attentively or neglectfully tend, you know? And so I mentioned memories in my list earlier about things that we return to, because obviously memories take up a significant space in our souls, you could say, in our inner ecosystems. And most often the memories that last the test of time, aka the ones we return to the most, are the ones that have the most emotional gravity, positive or negative, and the ones that make us feel joy, embarrassment, regret, or empowerment as just some emotions that they might elicit. Um, and I've been thinking about this as like the memory playback reel. We all have a memory playback reel. And these memories have emotional gravity. I've been using gravity because they pull us they pull us back to them. They have this emotional gravity. So, for example, a week hardly goes by without me being haunted by a memory of taking my oral exam to get my master's degree, in which I fumbled awkwardly to answer questions about things that I could have easily responded to with far more clarity and grace. And I just feel like I did a horrible job that day. And I really do think about it too much. Not all the time, but it does pop up. Or the memory of my mom getting pulled by our dog when I was a kid onto the ground and slicing her knee open on the sidewalk. Sorry if that's a lot, but that's that memory pops in my head all the time. And her knee, it wasn't like a crazy big deal. It was just but at the moment, I guess especially my age, I was super young, and these memories that just are in the playback reel. And so in the midst of reflecting on all of this, I kind of I got inspired by Giordano Bruno. Not sure if how many of you are familiar with this guy. He was a poet, philosopher, and cosmologist who was burned at the stake by the Roman Inquisition in the year 1600 for his heretical views toward church doctrines, the geocentric model, and Aristotelian dogma. He's a very, very interesting fellow. I recommend looking into him. But he talked about memory a lot, and he talked about the memory palace. He was somebody famous for talking about techniques to kind of remember, to sharpen our memory and remember more information. So he talked about the memory palace, and so I've been inspired by him to build a memory palace, but in this context, not for the purpose of remembering things better, but of kind of making looking at my playback reel and consciously making meaning out of some of those memories. So I have a whole I have a whole document for this, and my girlfriend Valeria often calls me an archiver, sometimes with a positive undertone, sometimes with a negative undertone, but it's true. I am an archiver, and so of course I have a document for this. And so I have this document that I'm building, and I basically I have 7 rooms in my memory palace with 7 memories each. So you can tell that 7 is meaningful to me. It's a number I return to. So I have 7 rooms, 7 memories each, and each room has a different theme. And this is this the document is called My Memory Palace of Consecration. Um, and so to give you an idea of some of these themes, um, the first room relates to my sense of belonging. So it's like 7 memories from my playback reel that in one way or another deal with my sense of belonging or lack thereof. Because a lot of these memories are positive and some of them are more difficult memories, you know. I want each room to have a mix actually of ones that make me kind of feel good about myself and ones that um just make me wonder why, maybe say something about my wounds, for example, or something like that. So the first one is about my belonging. The third room relates to my agency or lack thereof, memories related to that. And my fifth room relates to my communication, my listening and expression, things like that. So that gives you a little a sense of the themes. Um, and so, for each memory, I basically free write for as long as necessary about why that memory is hung around so long and what it reveals to me about myself. In other words, I've returned to these memories more than others because of their gravity, have found them more meaningful than others, and now I'm trying to figure out why, trying to make this returning process more intentional, more conscious, and less passive. So much more could be, I'm not done yet, but much more could be said about all the things that I've brought up so far. Um, but in my limited time, I wanted to make sure to kind of shift into a reflection on how all of these notions of meaning and returning and consecration and intentional, being more intentional about these aspects of our lives, um, how that applies to the collective, not just the individual, but the collective. And basically, um, collective meaning making and collective memory. One way we could think of collective memory is history, right? History is essentially collective memory, you could say. And so I would also like to suggest that there is something like the collective soul. Um, this could be seen as like the collective psyche or collective ecosystem, where things like principles, ideologies, belief systems, values, and the past shape the external environments and relationships in the collective, right? So, our personal inner landscape and collective inner landscape shapes our external lives, and our external lives equally shape our inner landscapes, if that makes sense. So the two co-arise together. And just like our personal memories, our collective memories have a playback reel, you know, the emotionally charged events, periods, breakthroughs in art, literature, technology, politics, or otherwise, tragedies, wars, and significant figures who traumatized or elevated their moment in time and the future that unfolded after them. And of course, there are tons of memories in our collective history that are often overlooked, unknown, manipulated, or suppressed. And people like our very own Ignacio make efforts to bring these to our attention so that we can see what they reveal too. And even the ones that are widely remembered, we often don't know all the details about, such as figures like Buddha, Jesus, Socrates, or Lao Tzu, or the so-called Big Bang, or any prehistory before written language, or the direct experience of the brutal institution of slavery in the United States or elsewhere, or of being in a Nazi camp, or of the untold recent Palestinian suffering and deaths. Regardless, the ones with the most emotional gravity can undergo the same sort of three-part inquiry from us. This is something I've been carrying around with me for a while, which is, what do these memories instruct us to preserve, to transform, or to discard from the past? We can do this on a personal level or a collective level. And like our personal memories, we can look closely at what led to them, their origins, their roots, their causes, their inceptions and conceptions. We can look closely at why they manifested at that particular place and time. We can look at the ensuing consequences, their fruits, their repercussions, their aftermaths, just like we can do personally as well. We can see what to learn from them, what to try to never repeat again, what to remodel, what to model after, what cautionary or catalyzing tales that they offer. We can look at all of this with honesty and compassion and a desire to live sacred lives, lives of conscious meaning, love, creativity, nonviolence, mindfulness, and spaciousness. At least those are on my list of a sacred life, to better determine how to move forward and bring those aspects into fuller fruition together as a collective. Um, so for example, what can we learn from the gravity? Again, not gravity, positive and negative, of say Darwin, Freud, Marx, or Einstein, of Cleopatra, Joan of Arc, Mary Wollstonecraft, or Frida Kahlo, Martin Luther King Jr., Gandhi, Hitler, or Sri Aurobindo. What are all the reasons that the archetype of Christ has resonated so powerfully with the human imagination for so long? Whether you're religious or non-religious, or no matter what your relationship is like with Jesus, it's in the collective memory, there's gravity there, right? Um, what can we learn from the Civil War, the advent of the train, 9/11 and its consequences? What from the gold rush, the invention of the camera, the steam engine, or the atom bomb? The list could obviously go on and on, but from any of these or others, what can we learn about human tendencies, fears, fantasies, paradoxes, or possibilities? What can we learn that can help us return to or to cultivate more sustainable action? How does the collective occurrences, how do these, collective occurrences reflect the individuals within that collective and vice versa? So those are some living questions that we can carry with us and ask ourselves on an individual and collective level. Um, Ultimately, as always, I have been grateful and feel very blessed to be able to give a talk to this community. I've chosen a topic for this talk here, as always, based on something that I'm genuinely interested in and that I've been exploring recently. Something I've been returning to, finding meaning in, experimenting with, and caring about. Something that seems worth sharing. And so I'm hoping, it seemed also fitting this topic for, the cusp of the new year. And I'm hoping that at least some of it has resonated with you. And I can't believe 2024 is here already. Um, I encourage you at this juncture to look with honesty and care at all the things that you return to in your life, your habits, patterns, what you consume, what you express, your relationships, ideas, the content, beliefs, thoughts, feelings that you loop back to. Um, and to look at what you find most meaningful and why, and whether your returning processes can be made more conscious or more intentional. To look at your memories with the most gravity, if you feel compelled to see why you've been pulled back to them, to see what they reveal about you and your life, um, what to preserve, discard, or transform from those memories, and what loops to keep and which to prune. And I encourage you to consider how all of this relates to collective memory, to history, to collective meaning making, to collective action, and how we can together practice more constructive and healthy ways of making our returning more worth it, more balanced, more free, and more healing. May it be so. Amen.